And it's interesting because fundraising is highly nonlinear. Actually, it's not that you have to do these things every day and then you expect basically the result, like at the same time. So it is a time, there's sort of some form of timing of it, or there's a cadence actually, so not time, a cadence of it. Sometimes things accelerate and you go in overdrive, you review documents and then they kind of slow down and you hit a snag or an impasse and you have to get out of it. And so I think if I had more time, yes, I think at the same time, it is also, despite that, right, which is it's timing and so on, and you're kind of running multiple things. It is also a funnel-based problem, actually. And so with more time, you increase the size of the funnel. And I think as CEO, you always grapple with that because on one hand, it's not that you can actually also completely put aside the day-to-day and mostly making the decisions actually for the day-to-day that the team is expecting you to make.
Yeah. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Business of Learning podcast. My name is Joao Camargo, and my guest here today is Patrick Anquetil, who is the founder and CEO of Portal Instruments. Patrick, thank you so much for being here today. I'm super excited for this conversation, and welcome to the podcast.
Likewise. Thank you, Joe. It's great to be here. And learning is key. We all need to always learn. That's very important.
Amazing. Why don't we do some of that right now? Why don't we start off with you just sharing a little bit more about yourself, a little bit more about the company to anyone that's listening in. Tell me about the problem you guys solve and who you guys work with.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So first of all, I'm Patrick. So I'm from France originally. I came here to study. I love the spirit. I love the can-do attitude. I went to MIT. There was a lot of can-do attitude there on top of this. So I stayed. I've been 20 years in Boston. And really, my passion is to start companies. I started 3 companies, all 3 in medical devices. The first 2 were in medical diagnostics, and the current one that we're doing is a so-called drug delivery company. So, drug delivery, what does it mean? It's not a like Uber Eats for drugs. No, it's basically we inject. We help basically administer the medicine. So I like to call this what we do. I like to call it that we develop injection technologies. But maybe the more layman's person way to say it is that we really try to improve upon the traditional needle and syringes. So in that realm, we have 2 products. We have our, I would say, flagship legacy product, which is a needle-free injector. Very, very cool. I've got it actually right here.
Awesome.
And then we have the more simplified version that's actually needle-based, but much, much smaller, called Nexus. And so Nexus basically allows you to inject any medicines and really do so in an automatic fashion. And then Prime here, the larger one, allows you to do that needle-free.
Yeah, that's so super, super cool. Of course, the needle-free one is the one that stands out, right? Everyone that hears about it is like, oh, how does that work? How does that even make sense? So I would love to understand a little bit more about how that actually happens for someone who is, of course, ignorant on the mechanism of it. So it'd be good to hear. And also tell me a little bit more about some of the best use cases for it. So are you guys partnering with other companies to be able to administer this to the public? So tell me a little bit more about that for anyone that's listening in as well.
Yeah, so the first part of your question is, how does it work? How can you inject without needles?
Yeah.
It's pretty cool, actually. We get the idea from Star Trek. So, Star Trek was unusual in that they actually employed physicists on the set to kind of imagine the future, but also not violate too many laws of physics. So it could be something real. And in Star Trek, actually, there were 2 medical devices. First of all, there was the tricorder that could diagnose any diseases. And do so, very quickly and I think, seamlessly and so on. And then there was the so-called hyperspray, and the hyperspray allowed you to inject any medicines needle-free. The way it works is that we actually compress the drug very, very quickly. So imagine you've kind of got the cartridge and that contains the drug. We just compress it very, very quickly. And at the end of that cartridge, you have a very small orifice. The orifice size is about like 2 hairs if you kind of put them,
very
on top of each other. Very thin, much, much thinner than a typical needle and syringe. And so as you can imagine, you kind of compress it very quickly and it just comes out at extremely high speeds from that container. And what happens is that when it then touches the skin, it sort of gently pushes into the skin and then eventually basically goes through it and then delivers the drug. And because it's much, much smaller in diameter, you actually don't feel that much. I mean, it's not imperceptible,
Yeah.
But it's just a tiny. I like to call it like a tickle. Like you kind of feel it, but
Uh-huh.
it's certainly not painful actually at all. And we've published a few studies to demonstrate that.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. And so it's almost like a pressurized system that just makes it like
Correct. Yeah.
very, very quick. It was like I'll call it nanoseconds. I don't know how fast it is. I'm just making that up right now.
Milliseconds.
Milliseconds coming through and just
Yeah.
making that quick. So super awesome. Thank you
Yes,
for
sir.
sharing that. And tell me a little bit more about the use cases and who you guys work with as well.
So the one thing also I want to point out is that the way we create the pressure is done with a so-called electromechanical actuator. Like basically think of it as an electric motor, or linear actuator would be the other way to call it. That actuator is under so-called closed loop control
Mm-hmm.
using a computer. So in other words, it's always monitoring what it's doing. And so we have perfect control actually of that
Mm.
very quick and very rapid needle-free
Oh,
injection.
very cool.
An injection, if you were to inject a vaccine, which is like a small to medium-sized volume in terms of the injection that's performed, that would take you a tenth of a second. So it's just very quickly.
Mm.
And then for the larger drugs, like the weight loss drugs or some of the autoimmune drugs, those would be about 0.3 to zero point 0.4 seconds. So it's just extremely fast. And so that's also why the patient actually doesn't really notice
Mm-hmm.
exactly what's going on, and so
Better
that's why
experience.
it's much more preferred.
Yeah,
So
very,
the
very.
use case, it's really for patients who have a chronic disease and as such have the burden to have to self-inject basically on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, it's either once a week or once every other week. Um, and it's interesting. It's not just a fear of injection; it's everything around. So, if you're using needles, you should be actually using a so-called sharps disposal to dispose of them versus the regular trash. And so, in addition, no one takes those needles back. So you cannot go to your CVS, your favorite pharmacy, and just give it to them.
Mm-hmm.
They actually don't want to take on that burden. So it's just a lot of challenges I think that the patient has,
Mm-hmm.
where when it's needle free, it's fast, it's extremely reliable.
Mm-hmm.
You're done and you can go on with your life. And then in addition to that, the device is also connected, and as such, it can not only track when you've done your injection, but also
Mm-hmm.
remind you, follow you in terms of like for, making sure like the treatment is going according to plan. And if you need help, it's there to basically connect you with all the stakeholders. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really, if you think of the future, I mean, in particular here nowadays where everything's kind of connected and digitized, well, that hasn't really happened yet for drug delivery. And we believe that with a needle-free embodiment in particular,
Mm-hmm.
you really have kind of the extra excuse to actually really want to use
Mm-hmm.
this therapy and so on.
Yeah, that's very, very cool. And in a way, it sounds to me like, for example, maybe a pharmaceutical company or providers, they can also take advantage of this because it sounds to me like it's a very reusable tool as well. So there's no danger in when it comes to, and correct me if I'm wrong here, please, but there's no cross contamination that can happen, like something with needles and all those things as well.
Yes, so the device is reusable, which is I think a key factor. So nowadays, Ozempic and other weight loss drugs are getting all the headlines. What people may not realize, in most cases, actually, you've got a pen. I'm just going to grab it here, like this one here. That's only used once, and so you do your injection. It's actually great because it's all it's spring based, so it just does its thing. It's actually quite a complex device. But then once you're done with the injection, you can't reuse it. So you have to toss this whole thing into the trash.
Mm-hmm.
To give you a sense of scale, just for the GLP-1, so the Ozempic-like therapies, um, currently the drug manufacturers use about 300 million pens per year. It's going to be easily a billion pens in a few years, certainly by the end of the decade. So it's a lot of waste actually that's there.
Yeah.
It's terrible, of course, for the environment, but it's also terrible for everyone's wallet, so to say, because those are not free, so
Uh-huh.
and they're quite complex.
Yeah.
And as such, you've got this odd thing where those devices really actually were developed for acute or emergency use.
Mm-hmm.
They were developed in the first Gulf War, where people were worried about nerve agents, and as such, the soldier had to have the medicine readily available in a format that could be injected right away with very little possibilities of making mistakes, and
Yes. Yep.
also with
Yes.
tremendously high reliability, so that if he or she needs it, it just works.
Hmm.
Um, I think when those devices were developed, no one ever thought that they would ever be used for chronic use. Um, and even in other kind of mundane areas of our lives, like brushing our teeth, for example,
Yeah.
well, we're
That's
not using a new brush every time. I mean, maybe we should. I mean, they get contaminated and so on. I'm sure if we looked at the bacterial load of those, it wouldn't be pretty. But still, we think it'd be foolish and yeah, just foolish to just get rid of it every time.
yeah.
And so that's
Such a good
really where
perspective.
the reusability actually can come in. And what's interesting is that, and that's actually also where Nexus comes in. We realize that to enable reliability, to enable sort of reusability, to enable that, you didn't need to be needle free. Of course, it was preferred; it's better for the patient. But we realized that there was a parallel path in which we could actually reuse the format that pharma is using, meaning like the drug container or the syringe,
Hmm.
but wrap a modern device around it that's
Hmm.
compatible with it. And because of its connectivity and its ease of use, already getting a lot of value back basically to the patient and to the greater community with this reusable platform.
Very, very cool. Thank you so much for sharing all that. I actually really love that analogy as well, the toothbrush one, because like it really paints the picture of like, hey, if this thing that we're using, sure, maybe we can replace it every time, but like not really. So I really, really like how you frame that. So thank you for that. I wanted to shift the conversation here as well, Patrick, into the company itself and how you guys are obviously looking at growth and all those things. Something that I always like to highlight here when having these conversations is that from the outside looking in, for others, sometimes business looks like sunshines and rainbows. But we all know as the leaders inside of them that that's not true, right? There's many challenges along the way, and something that I actually wanted you to touch on in our first conversation, we were even discussing the podcast for the first time. You mentioned that sometimes even other companies can be really utilizing a tool like this to increase tests and all those things, which are just other customers of yours. So when looking at it from a term of a growth perspective, what are some of the challenges that stand in the way of achieving more impact, having more people to be able to use something like this, which is much easier on the individual side, but also on a higher scale for other companies? Talk to me about some of those challenges that you guys face.
No, that's great. I mean, how much time do you have? I mean, we can spend the whole evening on that. I think you're right. I want to go back to what you said. People always only see the sunshine and the rainbow, and that's typically the article that gets picked up by
Yeah.
the local media, or things have to be terribly going wrong for them to make the headline. But actually, the
Yes.
day to day is not really covered, um, and oftentimes it's very interesting. I think it's the same thing with people's careers. When we all have peers from university that now through LinkedIn we can see what they're doing, or maybe they've become high
Hmm.
profile, and things are never what they seem. For example, there was someone I'd known, like, let's say 10 years ago, and maybe even longer, maybe like 12, 13 years. And he happened to come to Boston, which is where we're located. And I was writing to him, "Oh my God, you've had a fabulous career. You've done this investment job, this VC job, and now you're running this company." And he's like, "What? What are you talking about? The first VC job was a slug. The first investment job was a slug. The second one was a VC job. Well, that actually was the only people that wanted to hire me because I got fired from my investment job. I got made redundant. And then the CEO gig. Well, I'm delighted that you think it's great, but by the way, we're running out of money, and I don't know how I'm gonna I'm gonna make payroll this month.
Yeah.
So
Put it into
I think
perspective. Yeah.
I think it's just very interesting, and I think for maybe the younger audiences listening to this show, I think it's the one thing to remember. I think just focus on yourself. I mean, everyone, you just don't know what's going on. Once the door is closed, you have just no idea, right?
Hmm.
What's going on the inside. I think it's the same thing for us. I mean, I think we've had, um, humble beginnings. We had a great period of immense success with high profile deals. Then we had challenges. We had actually manufacturing challenges during COVID. Um, Nothing really technical, but basically sloppiness from a supplier. I mean, that story you hear all the time. in medical devices. Like there's a story about Dexcom, the blood glucose monitor that's just had to deal with that. The supplier just became sloppy. And now introducing a second product, we have to find capital to basically support that. So I think it's always a struggle. It's never easy. And I see, actually, interestingly, things that appear to be either risk free or very little risk actually tend to be the risky one. And the thing that you thought were risky, well, actually they weren't that bad. So it's really interesting how appearances are very, very deceiving. And I think therefore it's always good just to not get distracted by all those things that we read. I mean, it's okay maybe if you want to be inspired. I think that's great, but it's I don't think, the adage now is that, well, you've got the overnight success that took like 10 years.
Yeah, the overnight, the 10-year overnight. Yeah, 100%. And I agree with that perspective as well. I wonder what you would think about this. I've been asking a question to almost every guest that comes on, just because I think it takes away that cap for thinking. So I'm going to ask you that question as well. And I wonder where you go with it. What if you had a magic wand that you could just wave and solve one challenge within the company that would then allow you to solve all the client acquisition goals, the revenue goals, whatever that might be? And the reason why I ask that is because I think as leaders, oftentimes we are facing a million different priorities. Oftentimes those priorities are fires that we have to put out, many things that we have to take care of. But for this question, you just get one. So if it's more on the client acquisition side of things, if it's more on the team side of things, I won't allow you to say funding, because having more funding for anyone
would be the obvious one, of course.
Yeah, that'd be the obvious one for everyone. So what do you think, if you had to solve that one thing in the company, what would that thing be to then achieve that growth?
Well, interestingly, the one, I mean, companies die because they don't have customers, and as such, they don't have revenue. It's as simple as that, actually. And even for more established businesses, when they go bad, is basically because the customer left, and in most of the cases. And so I think for us, interestingly, on the funding side, if we could, a magic wand, if it could accelerate the decision making of our customers are pharma companies that think in decades, and it takes 10 years to develop a drug. If we could accelerate that, and we get to, because we can move extremely fast, we're very nimble. We also believe in this rapid cycle of designing, building, and then testing. And as such, if we can get the cycle loops or the cycle times of those loops very, very fast, then we're learning at an extremely high rate. And as such, when we may make mistakes, we can correct them very quickly, versus building something that then you only find out when it's said and done that actually didn't work. So we can move extremely fast, and enable them. And I think sometimes the wish I had is that our colleagues within pharma would basically have a greater sense of urgency to accelerate things, because then from there, not only do you get your funding problem resolved, because then investors like growth, and so because it was actually very easy to value the company, and you can put a nice multiple on it, and it's easy to raise. And also, I think in addition to that, then we also reach our mission, which is to help those patients and so on. So I think it starts really with a customer. That's what, if we could. I think we do find them, but I think if we could just give them some magic powers, where they just just accelerate, I think that'd be really great.
Interesting. Yeah, and it sounds like correct me if I'm wrong here, but it sounds like, hey, if there was something that could be done to speed up that sales cycle, make them engage faster, make them make decisions faster, which of course is oftentimes the hurdle there. But then on top of that, here's the part that I'm guessing. So let me know if this is correct. Through that urgency side of things is, hey, how can we educate them on the value that this is actually providing, and then the ROI that it'll create for them if they make these decisions 100%. Faster as opposed to slower.
And I think what's so interesting is that you think you're repeating yourself, and you think you are on every possible channel you can think about, and still the majority of people don't know you. And when they do, they still don't get exactly what it is that you're doing and why it's different.
The awareness side of things.
But we're talking really like the most basic stuff, actually. And I think this is the challenge of these times, is that you may have an amazing product, but it might be just difficult just to to cut through the noise, because we're bombarded by things and so on.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the thing that always fascinates me, because it's not like we just started. We've been around for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And but still, a lot of people just don't know us
Yeah.
at the customer level, right? So
Yeah.
that's which
And
is
if they don't know you, they
quite
can't
interesting.
buy, which is a problem.
That's right. If they don't know you, no, that doesn't work. Yeah.
That's so funny. I was hearing this entrepreneur speak the other day. And I can't remember if it's who I'm thinking of, so I won't say their
Yeah.
name.
Yeah.
But it was just, he was having a conversation. He's a very large entrepreneur, and then he's having a conversation with a smaller entrepreneur. And then this smaller entrepreneur was just talking about all these million things and problems and priorities. And then the larger entrepreneur turns to him and he goes, "So do people know who you are?" And he's like, "No." He's like, "What are the chances that if no one knows who you are, you're gonna raise the revenue of your company?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, maybe I should focus on that." He's like, "Yes, focus on that
Yes.
thing." It's
No,
like,
no,
make sure,
exactly. Exactly.
right? The probability is only going to increase, and if they don't know you, then it's only going to decrease. So that's just something that I remember there. And then as a final question that I have for you here, Patrick, maybe something to add on here later. I actually have a question that's not from me. I have a
Okay.
question that's from our last guest to you, and they had
Cool.
absolutely no idea who you were. So, so here's the question. You ready for it? It's actually a really good one as well. If you could only do one thing for the next 30 days in your business, what would that thing be?
Well, we're in the middle of a fundraising, so I think that's the easy one, right? And it's interesting because fundraising is highly nonlinear. Actually, it's not that you have to do these things every day and then you expect basically
Mm,
the result, like at the same time. So it is a time. There's sort of some form of timing of it, or there's a cadence actually. So not time, a cadence of it. Sometimes things accelerate, and then you go in overdrive. You review documents, and then they kind of slow down, and you hit a snag or an impasse, and you have to get out of it. And so I think if I had more time, yes, I think at the same time it is also despite that, right, which is it's timing and so on, and you kind of
mhm,
running multiple things. It is also a funnel based problem actually, and so with more time, you increase the size of the funnel.
mhm,
And I think as CEO, you always grapple with that because um, on one hand, it's not that you can actually also completely put aside the day to day,
mhm.
and mostly making the decisions actually for the day to day that the team is expecting you to
Yeah,
make, right? And so, but yeah, it has crossed my mind, believe it or not, these past few weeks. Well, what if I did the Bill Gates, retreat where I'm sure you know the story. I think he still does it now. I don't know if it's once a quarter, once a
I'm not too
year.
familiar
He
with it
goes.
actually.
I mean,
Yeah,
okay,
enlighten
so
me.
it's really cool. He goes in Washington State. He goes to a cabin for about a week. But there's nothing in there. There's I think there's no internet. Maybe he has his cell phone if someone needs to call him, as if like emergency, backline. But then he brings in a stack of books, of papers, and basically is there just to reflect and to
Yeah.
and to think about the future. I mean, that's
Mm,
I think it does it once a quarter, if I'm not mistaken.
mhm.
So um, it is. I think it's a beautiful thing because I mean, you could do this. It could be like a hotel room or something like that. I think changing the environment first of all is a great place to
Yes.
spur creativity, and then also it's a different setup. So maybe you feel okay just not to think about the rest of the other duties that you have.
Mm,
So anyway, it's
mm.
it's a good one. It's yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, having that focus. Are you familiar with Keith Cunningham?
I don't know him. No.
So Keith Cunningham is I don't even know how to describe him. I know he's an entrepreneur, but like the things that he's done, a million other things. But he has a book called The Road Less Stupid, and in that book he talks about something called thinking time, which is basically something that I haven't done in a while. Now that you're mentioning this, maybe I should get back to it as well. So like that focus time, but it's no screens, no nothing, literally a pen and a paper, and you take 45 minutes, write one question at the top or whatever it is at the top, and always have a little hyphen, a little bullet point open. That, of course, allows your brain to go, and you're not allowed to do anything else but to write. You don't have to write all the time, but you can't do anything else. So then, as you're going through that point, there's always one bullet point open, which is just like your brain's like, oh, there's something missing, something missing. And then maybe 10 minutes passes by, and I'm like, oh, that's the thing. And then I write that down. So that actually, that cabin thing you just mentioned reminded
Yeah,
me of
yeah.
that because it allows us to kind of take that step back, really analyze, and just have this as a focus. Like no other things, no Slack on the side, no Skype on the side, no dogs barking in the back end. It's just focusing on the moment and that problem. So that's really interesting. I'll definitely, yeah, maybe check out that book. It's a good book. It's a good
Well,
book.
I will check it out. I'll check it on my reading list. I'll add it to my reading list. Actually, yep, that sounds great.
Well, Patrick, thank you so much for your time. This has been such an incredible
Likewise,
conversation.
anytime. Happy to continue. And thanks for having us.
Yeah, I really appreciate you. Where should people go if they want to learn a little bit more about you, and of course also a little bit more about the company?
Sure, they can go to portalinstruments.com. So just one word, Portal Instruments, and just look at our two products exactly. Click the link down here.
Yeah.
and yeah, it's actually, I think people will be impressed to see that. In particular, for folks on chronic medicines, there are actually better solutions to deliver those medicines that are coming online. And I think I think they'll be quite surprised actually to see that. So yeah. So anyway,
Amazing. Yeah, good stuff. I'll leave as many links as I can down below here for Patrick and for the company as well. So if you want to check those out, please do. And if you enjoyed listening to this conversation and want to hear more conversations like this, I'm going to point down below again. Please hit the subscribe button, and I will see you on the next episode. Patrick, thank you once more for your time. Thank you.
thanks so much, Joe.